this with that. Okay, Namaste Sarane. So I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming to this talk. This is, as Naran sir said, this is the first time that we are talking about possibility of cognitive science in Nepal. The reason is, in the first place, this is my area of PhD, and as far as I know, I'm the first person so far from Nepal doing PhD in this area. We don't have this subject in Nepal so far. None of the universities teach this course. Now, why I got my area is linguistics. Cognitive science is, as you can see, I'm doing it from Center for Neural and Cognitive Sciences, School of Medical Sciences. This is connected with medical science also, but it also has connection with linguistics, language processing also. So my visit to NTNU was through this program. So from here to India to NTNU. So I conducted one study in Trondheim, one experiment, one full study, part of my PhD work. So what I'm planning is, so I'll give a brief overview of what this field is like, what is this subject, what comprises cognitive science, and what are the things that we can do using this field. So when you say possibility of cognitive sciences, science in Nepal, I think two questions come to our mind. So in the first question would be, is cognitive science as a discipline possible in Nepal? Because it does not exist yet. So why should we care for it? And second is, what areas of studies are possible in Nepal using the tools and methods of cognitive science? Because it uses some specialized tools and it has its own research methodology. So these two questions become important when we think of possibility of cognitive science in Nepal. Okay, so what is cognitive science then? So it's a multidisciplinary area of study. It's not just one single discipline. So as many as 6 disciplines come together. So education, linguistics, neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, artificial intelligence. Not the whole field, not the entire thing, but only that aspect what helps us to understand human cognition. So from education, the educational aspect, how does it change or restructure our cognitive mechanism? From linguistics, the area of psycholinguistics. That is the area of linguistics that is responsible for processing and representation of language in our mind. From neuroscience, the brain area, the neuroanatomy part, different areas of the brain which are responsible for different cognitive functions. From philosophy, the philosophy of mind. From psychology, the cognitive psychology. From anthropology, the part that looks at the cognitive aspect of human evolution. From artificial intelligence, this is from computer science, the neural network aspect, how we can simulate the brain network in the computer science. So because cognition is such a field that goes in our mind, that is not possible to address using only one specific area of study. So that's why different fields come together. So for a complete understanding of this field. So what is it exactly? So it is interdisciplinary study of mind and intelligence, how our mind processes information and knowledge. So it is study of cognitive processes involved in the acquisition, how we acquire knowledge, representation, how it stays in our mind, and use of human knowledge, how we use it. So how we acquire knowledge, how does it stay in our mind, and how do we use it? How do we retrieve again back from our mind? So the scientific study of the mind, the brain, and intelligent behavior, whether in humans, animals, machine, or abstract. So in machine in the sense, now artificial intelligence is coming very strongly now. So all the intelligence that goes in artificial intelligence, cognitive science also contributes to that, because ultimately it's a simulation of human intelligence itself. So it's a discipline in the process of construction of knowledge. So the origin is from Latin, cognitive, meaning know together, and collection of mental processes and activities used in perceiving, learning, thinking, understanding, and remembering. All that goes in our mind. So what are the cognitive processes then? So perception. So when we perceive, so we use all our sensory organs. Vision, through eyes we perceive, through ears we perceive, olfaction through nose, tactile through skin, and attention, memory, learning, all that goes into our mind. So thinking, reasoning, planning, decision making, problem solving, all that happens inside. Language competence, comprehension, production, how we understand language, how we produce language, how do we master language, volition, the intentionality, intentional action, social cognition, consciousness, emotion, images, better. So idea is everything that goes inside the brain, everything that happens inside human mind is the area of cognitive science, and all includes cognitive processes. Now how did it start? The birth of cognitive science. So it has its origin in philosophy, logic, computer science, and ultimately trying to look inside the mind. So it started with the first AI conference in 1956 in Dartmouth College. Then people like Newell and Simon, the first computer programming who gave the logic theorists, who were the logic theorists, and the logic theory machine in this publication, where they talked about the complex information processing system, which they call logic theory of machine, which is capable of discovering proofs for theorems in symbolic logic. So, and then which was the first step towards artificial intelligence. And the formal birth of cognitive science happened in 1956 in MIT in a symposium on information theory in 1956. This is where these people. So the theme of the symposium was Is Cognition Information Processing, where we use data plus algorithms. So where people like Newell and Simon from computer science, artificial intelligence, the first who programmed the computer, McCarthy, Minsky, all from AI, modeling intelligence. People, George Miller from experimental psychology, whose famous paper, Human Memory and the Stories of Information, Magic Number 7. Magic Number 7 means that our mind at a time is capable of storing 7 items, and then plus minus 2. If it's very powerful, up to 9 or around 5. So this still holds true. And from linguistics, Chomsky, who gave transformation grammar. So you can see people from different field, they came together and they thought of establishing this field. And then it moved on. Then later on, the subsequent developments were in philosophy, Putnam, who in 1960 published this Mindshare Machines. And from cognitive psychology, the first book by Nazar was published in 1967. And then advances in memory models in 60s, and more AI programs. So all these people working, so different academic contribution related to mind, logic, artificial intelligence added to this development. And so all these different people who contributed to this. Then Chomsky's from field of linguistics, his influence is very strong. Then there was cooperation among linguists and psychologists. Then they established a journal called Cognitive Science Journal in 1976, which actually started to publish the research in the field. And then Cognitive Science Society was established in 1979. So cognitive science programs in more than 100 universities around the world. So all these things have triggered and started and advanced this field. So the approaches that we use are different approaches. So philosophical approach, psychological approach, cognitive approach, neuroscience approach, the network is neural network approach, the evolutionary approach from anthropology, the linguistic approach, artificial intelligence, robotics, all that. So you can see, because it's a multidisciplinary field, so that's why we use approach from different fields, corresponding fields. So what is it about? It's all about mind and brain. So everything that goes inside. So what is study? So all fine. I mean, this is about mind, brain, and all that. So what do we study about mind and brain, or human intelligence and all that? Yes, sir. So we study mostly two things that go inside. So one is temporal processing, and another is spatial processing. So temporal processing is how our neural network, how our mind, our neurons, they process information, how fast, how quick, and all that. So there's how fast or how slow the information is processed, or how is information stored and retrieved, rehearsal, repetition, all that. So the temporal processing inside, and spatial, which areas of the brain are activated for different functions or where different representations occur. So where different areas are located and how fast we do it. Basically, it's mostly this two. And how do we study it? How is it studied? So there are different methods. So these are some of the behavioral methods. So in behavioral methods, what we do is we use reaction time studies. Reaction time studies are how fast you perform a particular task. So mostly in reaction studies, we measure in milliseconds. So 1 second has 1000 milliseconds. So all the cognitive processes are measured in milliseconds because our brain computes that fast. So we use applications like DMDX, PsychoPy, PsycTools, Pebble, Mouse Tracker, Eye Tracker. So these are different tools, applications through which we study human cognition. I use Mouse Tracker, and this picture that you see is Eye Tracker. So what it does is you can see there are displays, and then so the camera will record how your eyes move. And now, for example, let's say you are reading a text, and then I try to measure whether the text is easy or difficult for you. So we measure saccades. So different saccades are fixations. Saccades are movement, and there will be fixations. So if a particular word is difficult, then we will stay there longer, and then we'll move further. And then again, if there is a word that confuses, doesn't make sense, again we go back. So these are called regressive saccades. So the duration of fixation on a particular word is a sign of information absorption. So that we are still processing. So level of difficulty. So these are indexed that way. So and then they have there is a separate journal called Journal of Eye Movement, and they have been working on that. So this is one way of. These are some of the tools through which study cognition. And there are brain imaging. Also brain imaging methods like EEG. EEG is electroencephalogram. So when there is an accident, if you go to hospital, they do your EEG recording, the brain signals. So in the medical you have that. In our research we use it. So if you are given a task on the computer, and then so you can see in the left side, so there's a cap, and these are all electrodes connected to different parts of the brain, and which part of the brain is activating what kind of signals. So is recorded through EEG, and fMRI gives all the dynamic process that goes on inside the brain, and MEG actually combines the best of EEG and fMRI. So EEG has very high temporal resolution, fMRI has very high spatial resolution, and MEG has both. And in Nepal we have only up to EEG. We don't have fMRI, we don't have MEG. We have MRI, of course. So the equipments which are used in neuroscience, neurological studies and medical science are also some of the tools that we use here also. Besides that, we use other tools as well. So these are some of the journals which publish studies done in cognitive science, Journal of Cognitive Science, Journal of Cognitive Enhancement. There is a new journal where what kind of interventions you can do which can enhance our cognitive mechanism. So they have started publishing research on this journal. Bilingualism, language and cognition, how this journal publishes mostly when you use multiple languages, what happens in our mind, how it enhances our cognitive mechanism. And Journal of Cultural Cognitive Science is a very new journal. So this is one of my supervisor is also founder and chief editor of this journal. So these are some of the publications which are already there happening. So and also what do? We use some tasks. So we have now, you cannot tear the brain apart and see what is going on inside, right? If you just tear it, you will see only the lumps of tissues. So only way that we can find out what is happening inside is give some task and measure it, depending on how they respond. So we use tasks like Simon task, ANT is attention network task, Stroop task, Barul fluency test, and all these things. Here is an example of Simon task. For example, the tasks are very simple tasks, but they measure something very deep and powerful. Now, a task like this, if you see, there are two circles, blue and red. So these are mapped. So we ask you to map it. So left press, right key press. So usually in the computer, say for example, left shift and right shift. We might ask, whenever you see blue, always press left key, or whenever you see red, press right key. So it's a simple task. So you just have to remember, and then the color circles will keep on coming in random. And then you can see below the box, right it's called congruent, incongruent, and neutral. Why is it called that way? Because it's a red circle. So red circle, whenever red circle comes, you should press right key. So if it is on the right side, you press right key, it's congruent. But the same red circle becomes incongruent, so when it comes on the left side, and then you still have to press right key. Now, it's a very simple task, but people have done a lot of research using this. So this study is to test conflict monitoring. So it creates a conflict, because you have to map the response button to the left and right, and also you have to map the circle and color. So if you have to press, let's say, left key when your red circle comes, then it creates a kind of conflict. So you immediately become confused. So what we have found is, in congruent trials, people process very fast. Same color, same side. But same color on the opposite side, incongruent trial, the processing happens slow. So people who have high degree of conflict monitoring mechanism, so they can even process fast when the trials are incongruent. So tasks like this measure those kind of things. So this is just an example of what we do actually. So you might be interested how do we measure it. So one example is this. This is another attention network task. So this is where we have all this congruent, incongruent. So we can manipulate in different kinds of keys, and then it keeps on happening fast, and then how fast you resolve it. So an example of Stroop task. Okay, so I would like to give an example that we did a study. You can see this also is a kind of conflict. So we have color words like red, green, yellow, blue. In Nepali, if you write rato, hario, nilo, pahelo. But then if you see red in red, but then red in red is congruent, right? But red in green is incongruent. Red in yellow is incongruent. Red is in blue is incongruent. So what we do here is, in a task like this, so I'll show you the task. We design this. Okay, maybe a little later. So anyway, so this is what I will show you a little later. I mean, after I tell about the things what we're doing. Tools we measure is statistically SPSS, which is very common, R, which is now emerging quite fast, and MATLAB. So these tools we use to process data. Now, why I am thinking of this in Nepal? This is not done yet, and there is so much we could do, but this is still unexplored. So I still call it as a virgin land for cognitive science with tremendous potentials. It's like our waters. They're everywhere, but what we make of the waters is all in our hand. So all the following fields can be studied using the tools, techniques, and methods of cognitive science. So like in education, now early education to various stages, what happens. So mother tongue education, multilingual education, AI, robotics, computer science, psychology, linguistics, anthropology, economics, management, and all that kind of thing. So language, how language shapes our cognition, speech, language, pathology, and all that. Let me give an example of multilingual education or education. For example, right now there is a debate in Nepal about teaching in mother tongue. Mother tongue education is very powerfully coming up. The linguistic communities which do not have Nepali as their mother tongue, so they are taught to be taught in their language first. So what our Shiksha Commission has recommended is, they have not implemented, but this is the suggestion. So up to class 5 you should teach in your mother tongue, 5 to 8 in Nepali, and you should introduce English only after 8. So this is what they are suggesting. And their logic is, children learn better when they are taught in mother tongue. Fine, no argument about it. But what about the cognition? What happens when you do that? What is the mental implication of using language that way? So as a cognitive scientist, I would never recommend that kind of system. I would say introduce all the languages at the same time. Use Janjati language, use Nepali, use English. But then what they will say is, this is what we already have, but this is creating problem, and people don't want to stay in their school. They get confused and they go back home and all that thing. But then this is what the state has to do, find a mechanism how to get them involved. But cognitively, if you learn all this together, the language acquisition may be slow, but the cognitive enhancement is faster. And again, there is something called critical period hypothesis. After you cross the age of 12, it's very difficult to acquire a new language. So if you teach them in their own mother tongue up to class 5, and around that time they are around 12. So after that you introduce Nepali, so they are losing the linguistic flexibility. It will be very difficult for them to acquire Nepali, and it's even more difficult to acquire English. So now this kind of argument can come only when we really conduct a study. Those who are championing this, they have no scientific data. They have not done any scientific research, any scientific study. These are based on qualitative, impressionistic, subjective kind of studies, and for which there is no scientific basis. So using the insights from field like cognitive science, we can actually measure what exactly happens, make it more scientific and unbiased. So likewise in business also, like what are the consumer behavior and product perception, how they do it, how they buy. In health, mental health, dementia, autism, dyslexia, some of these are just starting. The tools from here can help even more. Even in culture and its influence on cognition, even in ethnicity, is there ethnic variation in cognition? How do various ethnic groups perceive each other? So we don't have any studies like this, so we can conduct all sorts of studies. So some Nepal and Nepali-based studies which I initiated. One study that I presented, parallel language activation in Gurung Nepali bilingual, presented in international conference in BH in 2006. This is what I've done using mouse tracking. And immersion effect on Nepali English bilinguals, presented in annual conference of Cognitive Science Society of India, Gujarat in 2016. And trilingual activation in Nepali English Norwegian trilinguals, work in progress. This is what I had done in Trondheim, one part, and another part I'm still continuing here. And bilingual Stroop effect on high and low proficient Nepali English bilinguals, presented in 39th annual conference in Linguistic Society of Nepal 2019. This actually, my son who is in 11, doing his first year level, so I want to train him these tools. So it was a part of training him, and when we had a data, we presented. So I'm just trying to show that study here, briefly. So an example, bilingual Stroop task, mouse tracking study. This is the tool that I use and what we do. So the stimuli that I was showing you just now, like in red, so we have congruent and incongruent class. Red is congruent, like I said, red, all these three are incongruent. So what we did something like this. So if you see here, so this is a neutral trial. Cross, neutral, there will be no effect, you can cross anywhere. Now this one is congruent, like green. So what happens in, we will show this on the screen. And if you see green, so all four colors come, yellow, blue, red, green. So what your task is, you have to ignore the word and you should click on the ink of the color. Now for example, now the word green is there, you can see green on the right side, right? So if you click on green, it will be wrong. So your task is to ignore the word, click on the color of the word. So color of the word is green. So green is this is congruent, so you can put green, same. So likewise in Nepali, rato, it's rato and rato is same. Now this is incongruent trial, where you have red and blue. So now red, now you can see on the right side, red, the word red is there, red and yellow, and red, blue and green is there. So what you have to do is, you have to ignore red, and you have to click on blue. So how fast you can resolve it? So this is conflict resolution. So it's very simple task, but people get confused. So likewise in Nilo, in Nepali, Nilo in Rato. So Rato is there, and then Haryo is there. So you should not click on Nilo, you should click on Rato, the color, the name of the color kind of thing. So, and then how fast you respond is measured through the mouse tracking. So this is a sample of, it gives this continuously captures the trajectory. It can record at the rate of 60 to 70 hertz. So which is, it can give you the data of, for every 16 milliseconds, it can capture how you are processing. So that's quite a good resolution to say something about how mental processing is happening inside the brain. Let me just tell you here to add, this is a very good tool even for lie detection. For example, our Nepal police, they are using polygraph. So polygraph that measures biometric, the blood pressure and pulse and heartbeat and all that. But a very clever criminal can suppress all that. If he is normal, you will not have any effect on the polygraphy machine. But with mouse tracker, it's not possible, because all the processing happens unconsciously. And the person who is tested is not aware of what is being tested. So we just design a task and we'll ask them to respond. And so it's only we who will know the manipulation, what kind of manipulation we can do to capture what kind of information. And then it just caught, just like that. So I mean, obviously I have not launched this as a forensic tool. It will be very risky because we are still in the process of it anyway. But this is possible to conduct those kind of experiments also. So we did this study. So what we found is, this is statistical presentation. Just the effect, the main effect for, so what we did, by the way, in our study what we had done, so we measured two kind of people, Nepali English bilinguals, high proficient and low proficient. So we wanted to check if high proficient Nepali English bilinguals are better than low proficient Nepali English bilinguals in conflict resolution task, the Stroop task. If they can process, who can process the incongruent trials fast. So that was what we wanted to test. So what we found is this. So on AUC's overall effect, area under the curve. So main effect for language was significant. That is showing overall deviation. So I'm just not ready well. So from here, I'm just showing this, the effect only. The main effect for language was significant. Showing overall deviation of the mouse trajectory towards unselected response was higher for L2 than L1. So they had, in Nepali, they processed faster. In English, the processing was a little slower. So in MD, more or less something similar. Now, initiation time, this is interesting. What happens is when you initiate, how fast or how slow does the language show any effect? The main effect for language was significant. Showing overall deviation of the mouse trajectory toward unselected response was higher for L1. So now in initiation time, in L1 they move faster compared to in L2. Whereas in response time, the main for response time was insignificant, so it did not create any difference. So only in which language they did it. So here is observable. Now if you look at this, initiation time is how fast they move. In concurrent trial, incongruent and neutral trial. So neutral trial, if you compare high and low proficient, the effect that you see incongruent, and best is you can compare congruent trial. So incongruent here and incongruent here. So which means the latency is low. That is, the high proficient processed move initiated faster compared to the low proficient. This we had around 20 participants and 76 trials. So it's quite a good number to say something about it. Whereas in there was in L1. Okay. Now this was in L2, also similar, but then the latency is slightly higher. Here also we have something similar effect. So the people with high proficiency, their response time was shorter. So that means they could process faster. In response time, now see, they were slightly slow. Higher were slightly slower compared to the low proficient. They move faster. Likewise in L1, whereas in L2, English, they were high proficient. So that's why you can see the effect of proficiency is very clearly seen here. The time, they have taken more time in responding compared to the previous one. So this showed very clearly that even in simple word like 4-color word, in congruent and incongruent manipulation, even the language effect was there. So this is almost like a replication of previous publication, Sarah and Mitchell in 2015, which was published in Bilingualism, Language and Cognition. So what we found, this was done in America, previous study. So something similar we do that in Nepal, we also find similar results. So we could easily replicate what people have done in other parts of the world also. So that is it. So all about how, just an example, what we have already started and what is the possibility and what we can actually see here. Alright, so having done that and having shown you one study, you might be, obviously curiosity might be there.
Sorry,
okay.
Sorry, sir.
So how do you become a cognitive scientist then? You know, what is the way? And what you can do. So some of the ways and how you can actually pursue cognitive science, or how you yourself can become a cognitive scientist. Okay, if I can continue, you can have a tea and snacks. So there is no one answer how you can become that, but if you can be objective, and also main thing is reading around the literature on this, and I think and talks like this, and also in Nepal some kind of initiative. Maybe this is the first time that we are talking about this, and a forum like this, whether it is useful, how we can go about. So these sort of things can help, and then also training students. If people are interested, so I'm trying to set up a lab, so where I'll be happy to do kind of things. So that sort of things we can start here. So what I'm doing here, my current initiative, because I can't just go around saying I'm the first PhD doing PhD in cognitive science, so I should be doing some work, to start. This becomes my first moral and academic responsibility. So these are some of the initiatives that I have started. So I'm setting up a cognitive science and psycholinguistics lab at the Central Department of Linguistics where I work, in Tiruvallur University, Kerala. And also we are starting a collaboration, replicating a special cognition study of East Anglia University, UK, with the principal author. So that first study that I start in this lab will be replication of the same study. So we are communicating on that. And this semester, when I taught my students, I trained the mouse tracking paradigm to second semester students of linguistics studying cognitive psycholinguistics. Study of spoken and written language processing, lexical access in bilinguals is underway. So my hypothesis for this study that I have started with my students is the marginal language group. Let's say those who do not, we give this experiment. So there will be a task. They have to click a matching picture. They will hear a spoken word. So in the spoken word recognition, their L1, they will process L1 faster. Non-Nepali, L1. So one is Lohorum to Nepali, Khalim to Nepali, and Khami to Nepali. So in spoken word, because they all speak their L1 and Nepali, both, they are equally proficient, and because it is their L1, they will process it faster. But in written, my hypothesis is it will be just opposite, because if they are their literacy is in L2, so they read Nepali. If they don't have their literacy in their L1, and because they have seen the script only in Devanagari script, so when the same word, even in their language word is given in Nepali, written in Nepali, so they will take time to process the L1, because script familiarity is only in Nepali. So this is the hypothesis we are working on. So if we find this, so this will show something like literacy difference in different languages, how we process spoken and written kind of scripts also. So this kind of study have not been done. They have done a lot of studies, relationship between spoken and kind of things published, because I'm following the literature. So this is not there. So if we find something like this, it will be something new from the Nepal side. So what direction can we go? There are many directions. So you can go right, you can go left, you can go straight. So you can choose the direction you want using cognitive science. So we can enjoy the flight.